Hello everybody and welcome to another video on the Pole Position YouTube channel. In this video we are going to be discussing Fernando Alonso's return to the sport of Formula 1 this season and a new brand name for the Renault team this year in Alpine, and if bringing in Fernando Alonso will allow and get Alpine to the next level of the sport and competing alongside the likes of Mercedes and Red Bull. Yeah, without further ado, let's get into the video. So yes, two changes for the Enstone team this time around. They are changing their name for this year, so they're not going to be called Renault. So they're going to be called Alpine for this season. It's like the sports car brand for Renault, and obviously they've had motorsport history in the past with rallying and such, so they are bringing in a new revival for the Renault team, which obviously began in 2016, which was, and back in the day would be the Lotus team before that. So obviously the Enstone team has had a lot of transition throughout its time. This is basically just a name change. It obviously is still the same team. A decent enough season last year for Renault with 3 podium finishes, Daniel Ricciardo being on the podium, as well as his teammate who's still there for this season, Esteban Ocon, but they are bringing in it's basically a comeback, isn't it, for Fernando Alonso, not just for the sport but obviously for the team he won 2 world championships with back in the day as well. So yeah, I mean, look, Fernando Alonso coming back is obviously a good thing for the sport. Personally, I think obviously we've got the great youngsters coming through with the likes of George Russell, Lando Norris. We have lost Alex Albon for this year, but we are bringing in somebody that I still feel can compete to the top level. We're not just bringing him for the name. He still feels like he can compete against the best, and I personally still think he's got that in him as well. Fernando Alonso, obviously he did have a cycling accident in Switzerland last week, which saw him break his jaw. So I think he had to have a bit of an operation on his jaw, but everything looks good. The positive news is coming out of it. He looks fine for pre-season testing beginning on the 12th of March. So yeah, everything's sort of looking good for that. But Fernando Alonso has gone on to state, because it's sort of still in the early stages of him returning to the sport and obviously seeing the car, that they're sort of not, they're downplaying what Alpine can do for this season, because obviously once the winter test is gone, they can see where they are in terms of everyone else in the mid-team, as I expect. They will be facing the likes of McLaren and Aston Martin and possibly Ferrari this season. That's where I sort of see Alpine's level at, because of where they were last year as well. And like I said, as I've mentioned in a couple of videos, 2021 is a bit, it's basically an extension of last year. The main regulation changes are going to be next year, so I expect most of the teams are going to be in and around the same sort of positions. It's just if they made any sort of aero tweaks and little upgrades to the engine during this very short winter period. But realistically, we've had to have our feet on the ground. Obviously not so dramatic due to the changes, like I've mentioned. So performance will not be too different compared to what it was last year. He still thinks Mercedes will be in the front of everybody, and then it will be Red Bull, and then it's a close fight between the remaining teams. But he's then gone on to say, I think it will be very tight, so we could be fighting for 6th or 7th on the grid, or we could be in 15th place very easily. So he's obviously downplaying it, and I always thought when Fernando Alonso would come back, he was only going to come back if he knew he was going to win races. And I still feel like that the car that they've got this season, even if they went back to the sort of changes that they had for last year, was still a podium winning car in certain times. Yes, okay, maybe things have to happen at the front for them to get there, but things can happen, and we have seen that a lot. Changes can happen, retirements, issues, crashes. So if you're in the right place at the right time, you can get a podium place, or you can get a win. You look at Pierre Gasly winning last year, Sergio Perez won, and he won from the being at the very back in the first lap. So anything can happen in them races. So if they can get that Alpine car in that position, Fernando Alonso does have a chance of winning. But I feel like with the car they had last year, even for this season, going into this season with that car, they'd still have chances of the podium. So I think Fernando Alonso is obviously downplaying it. Ultimately, we will find out where they are after winter testing and basically the first weekend in Bahrain. As I keep mentioning, that qualifying session in Bahrain for the first weekend will show us where everybody's outright paces for at the beginning of the season. Obviously they can make minor upgrades throughout the year, but ultimately that's where they're going to be in that first Saturday of the first weekend in Bahrain. We're going to know where each car is for performance. So obviously Daniel Ricciardo's gone to McLaren after 2 years at Renault. Cyril Abiteboul has left his position as well. So Esteban Ocon is still there, and obviously they're bringing in Fernando Alonso as well. I think Daniel is a top caliber driver, and being a McLaren fan, I'm happy to see him in the team for this season. But I still feel like Fernando Alonso is obviously a fantastic replacement for him, and obviously I think Esteban Ocon can learn off him. I know he's not a young driver anymore as maybe Russell and Lando Norris and drivers like that are, but I think Esteban Ocon still has things to learn, and I think Fernando Alonso can be somebody he can learn things off in terms of his huge knowledge and being a former world champion, a bit like what Lance Stroll might have to do with Sebastian Vettel. And I think Fernando Alonso coming in will inspire the team, but we all know with Fernando Alonso is that he demands the best. So if things aren't going well, he gets a bit cold on the radio, it can get a bit frosty sometimes. So you obviously have that with Fernando Alonso, who wants to be at the front of the grid, he wants to be at the podiums, he wants to be winning races. So the first couple of weekends, if they don't really perform very well, it may get a bit frosty, but when you re-sign Fernando Alonso, that's what's going to happen, and the top brass at Alpine will have to know that if it doesn't go well maybe in the first couple of race weekends. But having Fernando Alonso back in the sport is obviously great. It's great for the sort of marketing teams as well, for not just F1 but for Alpine as well. So I think it's only going to help them going forward, I truly believe. And I think he can, Fernando Alonso, if we're answering the question, yes, he can take them to the next level, but they need to give him a car that can do that as well. Give him a best car and he'll get it on the pole, is what I truly feel with Fernando Alonso's experience and his quality that he's got, his race quality. I feel like he could get them there, but they obviously need to give him a car, and he's coming into this sport. I think it'll just be getting back into driving a Formula 1 car. I know he probably hasn't lost it, but it'll just take some time maybe for then the main regulation change for 2022. I think that's basically what Alonso and maybe Alpine are waiting for, but I think they could finish the season with a couple of podiums, and Fernando Alonso obviously getting on that one of them steps as well. So yes, I think he will take them to the next level, but they might be waiting for 2022 mainly. But let me know in the comments section below, what do you think? Is it a great signing for Alpine to get Fernando Alonso back in the sport? And do you think they'll actually get a podium this year? Do you think they'll get a race win? I believe they'll probably get a podium. I think a race win might be a bit too far off, but like I said, look, we saw Sergio Perez do it last year and Pierre Gasly, so why not? But yeah, let me know in the comments section below. Please subscribe to the YouTube channel, it really does mean a lot, and I'll see you all in the next video. Take care, see you soon.